Dean Legge here at Farott Field in Middle Earth, Missouri. And Georgia really showing some power and muscle today. I thought this was a total beating, with the exception of a couple of moments in the second quarter. Georgia did not play well in the second quarter, which is a little bit like saying, I don't even know. They absolutely murdered Missouri today. This game was not competitive. From If there were 60 minutes, I would say maybe 10 of them were competitive, one with that block punt, and then Mizzou driving the field once. I mean, Georgia, I felt like could have scored 60 today if they wanted to, if they had left the kids in. But that's just not, that's not how it goes. They got a lot of development. I do want to talk about what this means for the future for Georgia. And I think that the immediate future is they will probably play Vanderbilt in Athens. We'll see. They will probably play Vanderbilt in Athens. And then this will certainly set up a New Year's Six bowl for the Dogs, probably in the Peach Bowl, but there is a lot of math left to still be done as things move around. Miami is getting absolutely wasted right now by North Carolina, and all these things can add up to sort of a different situation when the bowls roll out. But for the Peach Bowl, and considering travel and COVID and holidays and just all this stuff, this is going to be a different bowl game season than we've had in the past. There's going to be a lot of them canceled. If Georgia could just play at home in Atlanta, basically, they could ride over night before the game. They could practice the whole time in Athens. Things could be very similar for them. That's going to be something that the bowl committees, the College Football Playoff, is going to take into consideration. The Orange Bowl is the only bowl game that is almost certainly completely out of the window for Georgia. They cannot get there with Florida and Texas A&M in front of them, so that's not going to happen. But this, again, today is showing the path forward, not an immediate path. You start talking about an offense where all of these guys come back except two offensive linemen. JT Daniels looks good. My anticipation is that I do anticipate that he will be back in 2021. That's what I anticipate right now. Obviously, George Pickens can't leave. Kyrus Jackson will probably come back. Jermaine Burton can't leave. I'm sure I'm forgetting guys. Darnell Washington showed up today. A little bit of question mark with Zamir and James Cook. My suspicion is that Cook will leave. I don't know about Zamir. The plan has always been, and you know this if you're a member at Dog Post or if you're a reader at Dog Post, like so many of y'all are, was for Zamir to play 3 years and be done. Of course, injuries got in the way, so we'll just see with Zamir what happens. But Kenny McIntosh looks good. This is a Georgia offense that could look very similar to this, if not a little better next year. And then defensively, Missouri was shut down. You have to take into consideration that the drives where Missouri scored, one, there was a trick play. And that's credit to Missouri. That's a good play call. That's smart. The other was a block punt that started the drive at the 1 yard line. You could definitely make the argument Georgia's defense played just as well, if not better, than the offense. Georgia's defense didn't really struggle any that I can remember. Mizzou, I don't think even had 40 yards rushing. That's hard to do, even in this league. But I think there should be tremendous optimism moving forward. When you step back in a 40,000-foot view, you look at this season, Georgia did not play their best games against Alabama or Florida. They have played not their best games at other times. But when you reflect on what's going on here, you've got a 20-point win against Arkansas, a 20-point win against Auburn, a 20-point win against Tennessee, a 20-point win against South Carolina, a 20-point win against Missouri, and then solid beating of Kentucky and Mississippi State. Now, the state game, you want to say, it was tight. It was tighter compared to the other ones. But, again, after a while, you can only play who's in front of you, and you can only either defeat them or not. And that Georgia's had one game within 7 points of all the games they've won this year. 6 of the 7 games were double-digit victories for Georgia. They're not, they don't have a bad loss. They have losses where they lost to teams that are better than them or were at the time. And, it's clear this is a top 10 team. They should not be ranked behind Iowa State and probably not behind Cincinnati after these few weeks. So let's just see what happens. I don't think you should have a heart attack if they are behind, Iowa State and Cincinnati in the college football rankings, college football playoff rankings. But it's not that they belong in the top 10. That's what they are. I mean, it's clear. So they've had lopsided wins, lopsided losses, a couple of them. But, let's not do this thing where good teams are not called good because they're not in the playoff. I mean, you've got basically 6 teams that can get in right now. The 4 top teams, Texas A&M if Clemson loses, and then the Gators if they win their way in. So everybody else doesn't suck. I mean, that's not how this goes. If you're Georgia, you win your next 2 games, you have an outside chance of being a top 5 team to finish the season. And considering the mess of this year, not off the field, but on it, that would be saying something. I mean, starting 3 quarterbacks and winding up, even with a top 10 year, would speak to, the resiliency of the program. The other thing, I'll talk about this later in the week, but this is the best sign for Georgia was what Kirby Smart said earlier today, that they had their 2 best practices of the year on Monday and Tuesday. That's a stunning statement. I can tell you right now, college athletics practices are not fun. There's nothing fun about them. They're miserable. They're physical. It's just not fun. Playing the games is fun. Practices suck. And that they were geeked up, ready to go on Monday, and then followed up Tuesday with one of the best practices of the year, according to him, one of the 2 best practices. That just tells you the mindset of this program. They're still young. I didn't mention Jermaine Burton earlier. Good game. But George Pickens, pure freak, has to just keep his head on straight, and he will be a dangerous player next year at Georgia, and he will probably be a top 50 NFL pick, if not top 32. I mean, the guy is he is dangerous. If you're JT Daniels, right now, he would be rolling the dice a little bit leaving because there's so many guys in front of him. And you're going to be talking about 4 or 4.5 games, 5 games of playing where you could come back next year, get a full season under your belt, and I'll say it, not make the mistake that Jamie Newman made this year in leaving. Jamie Newman cost himself. It hurt him. He may have made the right move for him at the time. I don't know. But that move did hurt him because people aren't talking about him. And NFL teams and franchises are no different than anybody else. They do shiny objects sometimes. Tim Tebow in the first round, anyone? There's plenty of decision-making like that in the NFL. But when you're not playing, no one's talking about you. And that hurt. Well, here's JT Daniels being talked about now because he's throwing for 300 yards 2 of his last 3 games. 2 of the last 3. He's played 3 games, and Georgia scored 30 points or more in all of them. So that's, this is a Georgia team that if they continue to play like this, is going to be nothing but trouble from here on out. And I'm talking about 2021. You need time to develop guys like Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift. That's why you would like JT Daniels to come back. You look at Zamir. Could he stay? Could he go? I think you could make the argument for both. He is a steady running back. He is churning up yards. And then James Cook makes things look easy. So there's a lot to be said for this team right now. They just lost the 2 games they couldn't lose, and particularly the Florida game. The question, and this is not our fair question because you play when you play, but the question is if they'd play next week, would Georgia win that game? And it's not a certain, no anymore. And this is a team that's very different than they were when they left the field in Jacksonville. And, and even the weeks before that. I mean, Georgia's offense had to struggle to score. They scored. And sometimes they scored a lot. I mean, you look at the Tennessee game, to some degree, you look at the Auburn game, but it wasn't with cheap, easy points. I mean, these guys right now are scoring cheap, easy, big play, I'm not even getting touched points. And that's not what it was earlier in the year. It was a struggle. It's not a struggle right now. And There's something to be said for that, for sure. I want you to make sure that you check out this Brock Vandergrift highlight behind me. I want you to make sure to go to Dog Post and get on our mailing list because it is signing day week. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about the dogs and future dogs on Dog Post as we close this season out. Dean Legge for Dog Post from Farrat Field in Middle Earth. We'll see you on the site.